imagine a nearly perfect murder. Like the
Yeah,
body is flawlessly hidden for 34 years.
right.
The police are just completely baffled. The local community has confidently blamed the totally wrong man, and the killer has, for all intents and purposes, won.
Yeah, they've lived an entire lifetime as a free person.
Exactly. Until, well, a private investigator looks at a 34-year-old retail receipt for a fluffy Pomeranian dog.
It sounds almost absurd when you put it that way, but it highlights exactly how fragile a criminal cover-up really is.
It really does. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we have a fascinating stack of source material centered on a novel that absolutely shattered the mold of its own genre. We're talking about Sue Grafton's S is for Silence.
Right, and we should clarify, this isn't just a basic book review.
No, not at all. Our mission today is to explore what happens when a wildly successful creator decides to just take a sledgehammer to their own perfectly engineered machine. We're looking at the psychology of small-town rumors, the terrifying nature of confirmation bias, and how the most mundane objects like a lace curtain or, a pet dog can become the ultimate instruments of justice.
And we should really set the stakes here right at the top. This was not a debut novel where an author is throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
This was the 19th installment in Grafton's massively popular Alphabet Mystery series.
19 books. Let's just pause on that number for a second. The series features a private investigator named Kinsey Milhone, right? And for almost 2 decades, readers had been trained to expect a very specific, reliable formula.
Right, they knew exactly what they were getting.
Yeah, by book 19, you have an entire global fan base that relies on your work for comfort. It's like watching 18 seasons of a reliable procedural TV show. You tune in, you know the rhythm, you know exactly when the suspect will confess.
Exactly. You are providing a service. It's a recognizable product.
Right. And then season 19 drops, and suddenly it is a completely different beast. Okay, let's unpack this. In the previous 18 novels, we were firmly anchored in a single linear narrative.
Always following the detective in real time.
Exactly. But in S is for Silence, Grafton abruptly shifts gears. She introduces a dual timeline. The chapters alternate between the present of the investigation, which is in 1987, and the past of 1953.
Which fundamentally changes the reading experience. I mean, you are no longer just walking alongside the detective.
Right, you're jumping through time.
Yeah, you're watching the victim's final days unfold independently.
And it wasn't just the structure that changed. The sources note that the content took a shockingly dark and explicit turn.
Oh, absolutely.
For a series that had established a very specific, relatively accessible lane, Grafton suddenly introduces highly explicit sex scenes.
Yeah, including a deeply uncomfortable and detailed one involving a 14-year-old character.
Which is wild. And alongside that, minor homosexual references, which, for a mainstream, cozy, adjacent mystery audience in 2005 was a massive jolt to the system.
What's fascinating here is the dilemma of the established creator. When you reach that level of success, you are fighting a two-front war.
Right.
On one side, you have the fans who want exactly what you gave them last time. On the other side, you have your own creative stagnation.
Yeah, you don't want to just paint by numbers forever.
Exactly. If an author just paints by numbers for decades, the work loses its soul. But the risk of changing the formula is total alienation of your core audience.
Which is why I have to ask, why do it? Like, why risk a multi-million-dollar publishing empire just to flex your creative muscles? You could alienate everyone in one fell swoop.
You absolutely could. But the fact that this specific book skyrocketed to the top of the New York Times bestseller list for hardcover fiction.
Wow.
Yeah, boasting 1.2 million copies in print within a single year, that proves a fundamental truth about audiences. Readers just like you listening to this right now often crave evolution.
Yeah, we think we want the same thing over and over.
Right. But a master storyteller knows when it's time to force us out of our comfort zone to deliver something vastly more complex.
But changing the structure wasn't just a gimmick to sell books, right? Grafton had to split the timeline, because the villain in this story isn't just a person, it's the passage of time itself.
Ooh, I like that, yes.
Which brings us to the central mystery and the disappearance of Violet Sullivan.
Let's set the scene. It is the 4th of July, 1953. We were in the small town of Serena Station, California.
Okay.
Violet Sullivan, a local woman, gets ready, heads out for a holiday party, and just vanishes without a trace.
And as we know, nature abhors a vacuum. When there are no hard facts, a small town will fill the silence with rumors.
Oh, always.
So fast forward 34 years to 1987. Violet's daughter, Daisy, who has lived with this, gaping wound of unresolved trauma her entire life, hires Kinsey Milhone to finally get some closure. And Daisy hands over a list of the people who were around back then: her father, her former babysitter, and a couple of folks from the local car dealership.
And immediately, Kinsey is faced with the defining challenge of a cold case. For over 3 decades, the prevailing theories in Serena Station were either that Violet, who was known for being quite free-spirited, simply abandoned her family and fled with a secret lover,
Right.
or that she was murdered by her notoriously jealous husband, Philemon Sullivan, whom everyone calls Foley.
Here's where I have to push back a little on the whole concept of a cold case investigation.
Okay, go for it.
How can a private investigator possibly find objective truth when her witnesses have been marinating in gossip and personal bias for 3.5 decades?
That's a great question.
I mean, 34 years is a massive amount of time for a memory to warp.
You are hitting on the exact thematic core of the novel. Kinsey quickly realizes she isn't just investigating a missing person.
Right.
She is investigating the town's collective memory of that person. And human memory is incredibly subjective.
It's like saving a JPEG image over and over again on an old computer.
Oh, yeah.
Every single time the town recalled the story of Violet over those 34 years, the image degraded. They lost the sharp pixels of truth and replaced them with the blurry pixels of their own prejudices until the final picture they presented to Kinsey looked nothing like the original woman.
That is a perfect analogy.
Mhm.
Look at how fractured the perspectives are. If Kinsey talks to the teenage babysitter from back then, Liza Mellencamp,
Right, Liza.
a babysitter says she looked up to Violet. To a teenager, Violet's independence was inspiring. She saw a woman who refused to be boxed in by her era.
But when Kinsey asks almost anyone else in Serena Station, they paint a viciously different picture.
Completely different.
Right, the rest of the town deemed Violet a woman of quote-unquote loose morals. They claimed she was selfish, manipulative, and that she brought out the absolute worst in everyone she met, especially her husband, Foley.
Which tells us everything about the sociology of the time. Violet becomes a mirror reflecting the town's own 1950s prejudices and societal expectations.
Yeah, it was 1953.
Exactly. A woman asserting her independence or showing any kind of non-traditional behavior in a conservative small town was heavily scrutinized. So the town's collective memory wasn't actually logging facts about the 4th of July.
They were just logging their moral judgment of her character.
Yes.
So Kinsey is basically digging through 3 decades of weaponized gossip. But as she learns, if you dig through that subjective gossip long enough, your shovel eventually hits hard, objective, physical evidence.
And the timeline of actual events that emerges is incredibly grim.
Yeah, it's deeply unsettling. As Kinsey pieces together the literal days before the disappearance, a very specific, undeniable sequence of events comes to light. Violet and her husband Foley had a massive, explosive fight.
Right.
And during this argument, Foley physically tears down the handmade lace curtains that Violet had painstakingly made for their home.
Hold on to that detail about the lace curtains because it becomes horrifyingly important later.
Absolutely.
Oh.
So after the fight, Violet goes down to the local Chevrolet dealership. She talks to a junior salesman there, Winston Smith, and convinces him to lend her a Chevy Bel Air.
And then she drives that borrowed car straight to her bank.
Right. Empties out her entire life savings and then vanishes with her Pomeranian dog, whose name is Baby.
Leaving a massive trail of collateral damage in her wake.
Oh, yeah. The owner of the car dealership, Chet Kramer, is absolutely furious. Violet put over 200 miles on this borrowed Bel Air before she and the car disappeared.
Wow.
And the dealership owner is so unconditionally angry about the mileage and the missing vehicle that he forces Foley, the grieving, abandoned husband, to purchase the missing car.
Out of his own pocket, yes.
Wait, I just have to stop and think about the dramatic irony of that. Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about this from Foley's perspective.
Okay.
His wife vanishes on a holiday. His life falls apart. He is the prime suspect in town gossip. And on top of all that, the dealership owner forces him to buy this missing Bel Air.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Foley was forced to purchase a car that he didn't even want, which, entirely unbeknownst to him, was secretly serving as his wife's underground tomb.
It is a staggering level of tragedy when you look back at it. Because yes, as Kinsey continues her investigation in 1987, she discovers a crucial thread.
Right.
That junior salesman, Winston Smith, who lent Violet the car, ended up marrying the dealership owner's daughter, Kathy.
Oh, wow.
And by 1987, it is a deeply unhappy marriage. His wife is obsessed with status. Her excessive spending has drained him. and he is just exhausted by life.
And maybe it's that decades-long exhaustion that finally breaks his silence. The salesman reveals to Kinsey that late on the night of the 4th of July, 1953, he actually saw that missing Bel Air.
Yeah, it was abandoned out on a really offbeat, remote country road.
So Kinsey goes out to that specific rural area, and because she's looking with fresh, trained eyes,
Unclouded by the town's moral judgment.
exactly, she spots something in the landscape, an oblong depression in the soil.
So they bring in an excavation team.
Right, they dig into that depression. And they find the Chevy Bel Air. It had been completely buried.
Just completely underground.
Yeah, and inside the car, they find the skeletal remains of Violet and her dog, Baby. But it is the state of the remains that turns this from a missing persons case into a waking nightmare.
Oh, it's so dark.
The bodies are wrapped up tightly in those exact same torn lace curtains from Violet's house, and Violet's hands are tied behind her back.
Which points to a deeply agonizing, chilling conclusion. The forensic evidence suggests she was buried alive inside that vehicle.
Oh, man.
This is not a crime of sudden passion or an accidental death during an argument. This is a premeditated, logistical execution.
The logistics alone are baffling. I mean, you don't just bury an entire American automobile with a hand shovel.
No, you definitely don't.
But I want to go back to the author's choices for a second. Look at how Grafton uses domestic objects here. Those lace curtains weren't just fabric. They were something Violet made by hand for her home. They represent domestic life, marriage, nesting.
And they are twisted by the killer into macabre instruments of her torture and death.
Right.
It subverts the idea of the safe 1950s domestic sphere in the most violent way possible.
So, with a body finally recovered and an actual crime scene established, the whole landscape of the investigation shifts. Kinsey finally has physical proof.
But she still has to navigate the suspects.
Exactly. And that means unraveling a 34-year-old alibi that was built entirely on a psychological illusion.
Right, because once the body is found wrapped in those specific curtains, the immediate collective thought in the town is,
Foley did it.
yep, Foley tore the curtains during the fight. The curtains were on the body. Case closed. The husband is the killer.
And to make matters worse for Foley, the former teenage babysitter, Liza, actually comes forward with a memory that seems to completely lock him in as the murderer.
Oh, right.
She tells Kinsey that on the night of the 4th of July, she was hanging out at a local construction site with the town's resident bad boy, Ty Eddings.
And while they were there in the dark, she says they witnessed a man operating a heavy excavator digging a massive vehicle-sized hole.
And she just assumed it was Foley. She never actually saw the man's face in the darkness.
Wow.
But because of how Foley had treated Violet, and specifically because she knew about the violent incident with the curtains, her brain just did the math.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a textbook, terrifying example of how a red herring is born out of human psychology.
But wait, hold on. She just assumed it was Foley. In a murder investigation, how does a seasoned private detective not immediately flag that as a giant leap in logic? I feel like Kinsey should have caught that instantly.
Well, she does catch it.
Yeah.
Eventually. But you have to understand the insidious nature of confirmation bias.
Okay.
It doesn't look like a lie when someone tells it. It looks like their truth. The babysitter wasn't being malicious.
Right. She actually believed it.
Exactly. She wasn't consciously trying to frame an innocent man. It is simply human nature at work. We are meaning-making machines. When we lack data, we build narratives that make sense to our existing worldview.
Wow.
Liza hated Foley. She thought Foley was mean to Violet. Therefore, when she sees a shadowy figure digging a sinister hole, that figure had to be Foley. Her bias filled in the shadows.
So what does this all mean for the investigation? It means Kinsey has to painstakingly fact-check a 34-year-old assumption. And when she actually looks at the police records from 1953, the entire case against Foley collapses in an instant.
Yep, it completely falls apart.
It turns out Foley couldn't possibly have been driving that excavator. On the night of the 4th of July, Foley was sitting in a jail cell.
He had been arrested earlier for public drunkenness.
Right.
He was locked up all night, and he spent the entire next day working off his hangover. It is an ironclad, documented alibi.
Which leaves a glaring, horrifying question. If Foley was in a locked cell, how did the curtains that he physically tore down end up wrapping his wife's body in a buried car?
This is where the story highlights how mundane, everyday details can dictate life and death.
It's crazy.
Kinsey discovers, by digging through municipal records, that there was a delay in the local garbage pickup that week because of the 4th of July holiday weekend.
Think about the chaos theory of that. The trash bin sat out on the curb longer than usual, which means literally anyone in that town could have walked by, seen the torn curtains sitting in the trash,
Stolen them.
stolen them, and used them to perfectly frame Foley.
A simple holiday delay in municipal services completely derailed the search for justice for over 3 decades.
Yeah.
When witnesses let their personal biases fill in the blanks, and when a convenient prop like discarded curtains is left out on the curb, the truth gets buried just as deeply as that Chevy Bel Air.
The babysitter even admits to Kinsey later on that her perspective was heavily colored by her dislike of Foley. Everything looks suspicious if you viewed it through the lens of prejudice. Think about how this applies to modern life or, social media. How often do we see a torn curtain, like a single out-of-context video clip, or a vague rumor, and let our pre-existing biases instantly convict someone in the court of public opinion? We do exactly what that small town did.
We do. We leap to the conclusion that validates what we already believe. But in this case, the hard evidence proved the community wrong.
Yep.
If Foley didn't do it, the answer had to lie elsewhere. Not with the angry husband, but perhaps with the secret lover that the town had whispered about.
And the ultimate clue to breaking the case wasn't hidden in the town's gossip. It was sitting right in Violet's lap the whole time. The Pomeranian?
Baby, the dog.
Yes. Kinsey remembers a tiny detail. Daisy, Violet's daughter, had mentioned that the dog was a gift, supposedly from a romantic partner. So Kinsey follows this final, bizarre hunch.
She pivots entirely away from the complex web of human relationships
Exactly.
and focuses purely on the pet. She manages to track down the original breeder of the dog.
And this is the fatal flaw of the killer. Breeders keep meticulous records. This is where the physical, objective evidence finally cuts through 3 decades of small-town lies. The breeder's paper records reveal exactly who purchased that Pomeranian.
It wasn't Foley. It wasn't the car salesman.
Nope. It was a local construction magnate named Tom Paget.
The man with unrestricted access to heavy machinery.
The excavator.
Exactly. The man who would know exactly how to operate an excavator at a local construction site in the dead of night to bury an entire automobile.
So when Paget realizes that Kinsey is digging into the dog's origins, he panics. He knows she is onto him.
He has to act.
Right. He tails her away from the breeder's home, and out on a lonely country road, he attacks her. The confrontation escalates violently. Paget tries to kill her, and Kinsey is forced to shoot Paget to death in self-defense.
This raises an important question about the inevitability of truth in the modern world. It is such an incredible climax because of the sheer irony of his downfall.
It really is. Think about the scope of what Paget achieved. He committed a near-perfect murder.
Yeah, he did.
He used his professional construction background to bury a massive vehicle and hide a body so flawlessly that it stayed hidden for 34 years. He beat the police. He outsmarted the town gossip.
He let an innocent husband take all the social blame.
Yes. But his ultimate undoing wasn't a sloppy murder weapon left at the scene or a footprint or a brilliant forensic deduction of DNA.
No, it was a retail transaction.
Right.
You can move earth, you can manipulate a town's perception, you can rely on the biases of witnesses to act as a brilliant smokescreen.
But Paget couldn't erase a simple paper receipt for a fluffy dog he bought as a romantic gift.
Wow.
The mundane bureaucracy of a pet sale outlasted a 34-year lie. It's staggering when you lay it all out like that, and it really brings us back to why this deep dive matters in the broader sense.
Right.
We started this conversation by talking about a wildly successful author taking a sledgehammer to her own perfectly engineered machine.
Right.
S is for silence proves that stepping out of a comfort zone yields the greatest rewards, both in art and in the pursuit of truth.
It applies on every level of this story. Sue Grafton stepped out of her structural comfort zone by using a dual timeline.
Yeah.
She stepped out of her thematic comfort zone by tackling darker, more explicit themes that challenged her cozy readership. And because she took that massive risk, she was rewarded with a commercial and critical masterpiece.
And on the narrative level, Kinsey Malone had to step out of the comfort zone of conventional interviewing. She couldn't just write down what people told her.
No, that wouldn't have worked.
She had to look past decades of comfortable, familiar, small-town gossip to find the deeply uncomfortable, buried truth. Both the creator of the story and the investigator inside the story had to break the rules to get the result.
They both realized they couldn't rely on what worked in the past. They had to dig deeper, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. Think about that perfectly engineered machine of routine and assumption in your own life. Consider the town or the neighborhood you live in right now.
Every single community has its lore.
Yeah. If someone were to suddenly dig into a rumor that has been circulating in your community for 30 years, something everyone just casually knows is true, how much of it would actually be grounded in hard, undeniable fact?
And how much of it would just be the community's own prejudices, their own unexamined biases masquerading as the truth?
Right.
It makes you wonder what else is buried right beneath the surface of the places we call home.
It certainly does. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the incredible mechanics of this story. We hope you walk away looking at the world and maybe the rumors in your own backyard just a little bit differently. Keep questioning the narrative, and we will see you on the next deep dive.